Okay, so this is me. I'm one of the organisers here. I've been a programmer since the 1980s. Learnt on a machine called the Dragon 32, if anyone remembers it, in Microsoft Basic. And got a ZX Spectrum, and through the 90s it was kind of QBasic and Visual Basic 3, 4, 5, 6, and then kind of the web came out, and then I sort of started doing it commercially. So I've worked primarily on the Microsoft stack for about 15 years or so, and on web technologies, and since getting the first iPhone, I've also been doing mobile development.
Are you switched on?
I think I'm just the video guy. Okay. So yeah, I co-organise this, and I also co-organise a group in Macclesfield called MacTech. A couple of you are here from there. You might have seen this before. I did this talk about a year ago.
It's red rather than blue this time. So.
Yes.
Are you going to admit to anything like Python or Pascal?
I've done some work in the past month for somebody that uses Delphi. So, but I'm just passing something to a DLL, and he's picking it up in Delphi. So, okay, so I'm going to talk to you about free SSL with Let's Encrypt. So, what the SSL is this? So it's to do with having secure websites. SSL means two things. It's one of the encryption mechanisms along with TLS. So SSL, secure sockets layer. TLS is transport layer security. The SSL versions are actually kind of deprecated now, considered insecure, but SSL still gets used as kind of a blanket phrase for all of this stuff. And it's about serving websites over HTTPS, typically on port 443, encrypted. So why go secure? Well, you might have seen these not secure warnings in Chrome and other browsers, and
I get that annoyingly because the fact that one image in your site is not going to.
Yes, yeah. Well, Chrome have got a roadmap for this, and they're gradually building up the aggression on this. 1st of July, it went up slightly. You'll get more warnings if you've got a page with a username and a password on it, that sort of thing. And so initially it started with just the exclamation mark, and then it went to not secure, and I think Safari is doing it now, and other browsers. It's a positive Google search engine results factor if you've got a secure site. Again, they're probably pushing this out slowly like they did with mobile-friendly sites. At one time they were tagging things with mobile-friendly, and there was a warning in Google Webmaster Tools that you needed to do this, and I think now, unless your result is hugely relevant, if you've not got a mobile-friendly site, you will not show up in mobile search results, and I expect something similar to happen with secure websites. If you make apps, if you start a fresh app project on iOS now, you cannot communicate over HTTP unless you put an exception in the plist settings file. And I think Apple have a roadmap for, at some point, they're going to stop allowing apps to go to review that have got this exception. So, yeah. And I read this one last week, Facebook login. If you use Facebook login on your website and your website isn't secure itself, then they're going to turn off that facility to you. And I expect logging with Twitter and those sorts of things will probably follow suit. But more fundamentally, why go secure? Well, it gives a confidence thing. If it's your own website, well, if customers come on and they say not secure or insecure, it's not a good vibe. If it's a site that you're looking after for somebody, you're in a hosting or a dev company, then why continue to talk down people? Oh, it doesn't matter that you're seeing that, it is secure. Oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't need to be secure. It's because it's the right thing to do. The web, I've used the examples of Google and Apple and Facebook, but it is the right thing to do to get things encrypted. Just happens to be that the web is based on technologies from a long time ago. And it can be super easy and free, honestly. So I'm not going to go too much into the technical details of SSL, but in a nutshell, your PC, your browser or your phone looks up a website, finds out where it is, and then asks the server, oh, can we do this on SSL, on HTTPS? The server passes back a certificate, and there's an exchange of keys, and everything then happens over HTTPS. And the certification process has traditionally been you create a certificate signing request on your server, file with a load of hashes in it, and you give that to a certificate authority, and they give you back a certificate which you then need to install on your server. And the traditional names that are in that game are people like GeoTrust, VeriSign, RapidSSL. It's traditionally been a paid-for type thing where you would download something, upload it somewhere, pay some money, might get it straight away, you might get it emailed. And there's been various levels of certification available. So you've kind of got this lower level, this is based on Komodo, this lower level certification where it's based on a single domain and it's more or less instant, although you're paying for it, and you have to do this upload and download process. You can have a wildcard version, so if you've got subdomains of a domain name, because you've got maybe a cloud service and you come on your domain.mydomain.com, and you can get a wildcard that would cover anything. Extended validation, that's where the whole bar goes green and you see Barclays Bank PLC in the bar alongside the web address. So they've gone to the effort of validating the authenticity of who you are. And there's these kind of enterprisey ones where you can have multiple domains all under one hood. So quick show of hands. How many of you are involved in certification on web servers? Okay, about 15 or so. How many of you are using Let's Encrypt? So about half or just more. How many are using traditional providers? So of those who are using the traditional providers, how many of you enjoy that process? Nobody, okay. It's tended to be you generate something like this and you'd upload it and come back with the generated certificate key, try and install it, and you often get error or invalid, and you start to repeat the process. Get on the phone to Komodo and end up with a replacement certificate, get really stressed about it, and then 11 and a half months later, kind of repeat the process and go through the same pain.
12 months later when you realise it's not working anymore.
Yes.
Usually.
So this has often worked in the cost and the setup pain and the renewal pain means that I can't be asked. And that's generally been the case for like personal websites or brochure websites. Oh, I don't need to secure this one because it's not an e-commerce website, or there's nothing financial going on. Well, the world's kind of moving against you there, as you've seen in Google Chrome. They're increasing their aggression in trying to make the web secure. So that's a dated attitude, really.
The quote trying.
So I'm going to show you Let's Encrypt tonight, which is a free, automated and open certificate authority. And it does single domain certificates. You can have as many as you like, but they're kind of issued on a single domain basis. So if you've got a website, you will need 2 certificates for domain.com and www.domain.com. Certificates are valid for 90 days. It might not sound like a very long time, but part of the process is that the scripting sets itself up to auto-renew. It will check for a renewal every single day. And if you're within the last 30 days, then it will accept a renewal and automatically renew it. So they've actually said that they're going to lower that 90 days at some point when this becomes more mainstream, and that number will get lower. So lots of people panic at that point because they like their 1 or 2 year certificates, but this is how this works. And as mentioned, there's an automated renewal process. And it's universally trusted, and it's supported by people like Chrome and Mozilla and GitHub. If you use GitHub Pages for static websites, there is now an SSL option on your own domain, and they will use Let's Encrypt for that. And it's the same 2048-bit key length and 256-bit encryption that you would get for 60 quid a year with Komodo, or more money with some of the others.
And the browsers know about it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the key
It works
thing,
on
isn't it? Yeah.
it works on
It's got the root
it works on
certificates.
Android's mobile apps and things like that traditionally have been quite difficult with certain certificates. And it uses something called the ACME protocol, Automated Certificate Management Environment. And the typical process is you create a vault, which is tied to an email address. All that email address is for is if your renewal process kind of fails and you go over that 30-day window, I think you get a reminder at 20 days, and then you get one at 10 days saying, no, this certificate hasn't renewed. And it's usually a panic to think, like, well, why is my script not running? So it's usually quite useful to get that email. I've had it once. So you request a certificate for a domain name, and you assign that certificate to a web server, and you can request a renewal within 30 days of expiry date. So if you've got a web server with 100 domains on it and you'd secure them all, you've probably done them on different days. If you have a daily task to run the renewal process, it might be renewing 1 or 2 a day or 1 or 2 a week, that sort of thing. And there's lots of implementations of this ACME protocol. Certbot is the kind of the named process for it on Linux servers. But there's implementations for all environments and all platforms. So there's code level things, there's C# level .NET stuff, and there's also command line tools for Windows or for Linux or for other platforms. And there's lots of options on Windows. There's a .NET library called Acme Sharp, and there's PowerShell scripts that go with that. There's a thing called WinAcme, which is a command line tool, and there's a nice GUI available, which is many people's first start, but does have a limitation where it I think it stops at 10 domains maybe, or some amount of domains, and then wants you to pay. It's like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of the kind of a free SSL idea. But all of these tools generally use the Acme Sharp library. They're built upon that. And we're going to do you a live demo. So I'm going to do a live demo on a virtual machine on Azure. something worth noting, set one of these things up, but make sure you tick HTTP and HTTPS, and make sure you tick remote desktop unless you're wanting to connect by PowerShell, because it's a bit of a pain to add these on post-event. And so if you are going to install a blanket Windows server, then you'll need a few things. Install IIS from the Add Roles and Features wizard that comes with the Server Manager. Takes a couple of minutes. And install this URL rewrite module. You don't need it for the Let's Encrypt process, but it's useful for something else that I'll show you a little bit later on. So I spun this machine up on Sunday. So it's a standard Windows Server 16, and I've just done those prerequisite things of the IIS and the rewrite module. I've installed Zoomit, so I should be able to show you what I'm doing. And that's it pretty much. It's got Chrome and Notepad for the ease of the demo. So I'm just going to go into IIS, and if I expand the websites, so it's got the default website that comes with the operating system. I'm just going to turn that one off because we don't need that. I'm just going to add a new website, and we'll call it .NET North. And we'll stick it somewhere. And I've got a domain name or subdomain, so I'm just going to use .NET North .mike-irving.co.uk, and I'll start that. Okay, so there's a site there, but there's nothing in it. I'm just going to browse to that website, to the file system. And I'm just going to make myself a HTML file, index.html, and it's probably got .text written on the end, which it has. And I'm just going to nick some HTML. Come back to Chrome. So the website's definitely working. Can do a little bit better than that. So we'll stick this in, which has deliberately got a few faults in it, which I'll discuss afterwards. So it's got a graphic and some bits and bobs on there. So I'm just going to go to GitHub and download this WinAcme, the command line tool, which was going to provide the Let's Encrypt for us. So if you want the source code for this, you can have it, but we're just going to get the latest release and work from there.
facing the pizza.
So I'm just going to create a folder and extract that into there. So just to recap what I've just done, I've been to GitHub and I've downloaded this WinAcme implementation of Let's Encrypt. I've unzipped it and I've stuck it in a folder on the C drive. You can do what you want with it really. And it's a command line tool, so I'm just going to fire up a command line. I'll just run it as administrator. You might need to for permissions type things. It's me cursor gone. So hopefully we can get that to a decent enough size. I'm just going to go to Let's Encrypt folder. Oh, that's annoying.
With Mac with American keyboard?
Yes. No, I think it's the remote desktop, the server keyboard by comparison to this. So I should be able to do this. Okay. So you just type Let's Encrypt to start the tool. And it presents you with a list of options. Create a new certificate, some advanced options, list any scheduled renewals, kind of processes, revoke a certificate. So if you've got a site that isn't on the server anymore, cancel the scheduled renewal. We're just going to go for N, create a new certificate. And it's going to offer, do we want a single binding of an IIS site, a certificate of all bindings of the site, a certificates for multiple sites, or manually poke these in. So we're just going to use number one, single binding. And it will just give you a list of host names at the bottom there of sites that you've got in IIS. I've only got one, so it's the .netnorth.mikeirving.co.uk. And it's asking me to enter an email address. So this is just to get the failure notices. If you get to 20 days and you've still not renewed, you'll get an email saying, did you know you've not renewed? So I'm just going to make one up. Oh. And then what this is going to do is that process that you used to do manually. So it's going to create a certificate request, send it to Let's Encrypt, get back a certificate, install it, bind it to that website, and do it all for you. What it will do as part of the process is it sticks a folder called known secret in your website root, and it sticks a file in it, which it then deletes after it's verified. If you've not got permissions set up properly, you sometimes find that folder gets left in your root directory, but it's only got a couple of kilobytes of files in, so it's no biggie, really. So I'll kick that off. And do I agree to the terms and conditions? Yes.
Which you obviously read in explicit detail to ensure.
And that process that used to be a pain in the arse and used to involve emails and downloading things and uploading things, that's done. So within 10 seconds you get your certificate, and if you read the script of what it's done, it'll tell you that it's requested it and it's done this file thing and it's bound it to your IIS website, and and that's done. And it's also added the auto renewal script to Windows Task Scheduler for you. So if you come in Task Scheduler down here, there's a new task here to a daily run to run this command, which is just let's encrypt -- renew, and you can run that yourself. Let's encrypt -- renew, and this is just going to tell us that, well, I'm not going to do it because none of these certificates are kind of ready for renewal yet, but if you were to run that on a day when it was eligible, it would kind of do that 10-second sort of process again for each domain that needed doing.
So you'd set up a Windows scheduled task or something to run this?
It's done it for you.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so and if you add any new domains on, it'll automatically add them to the default. So yeah, not sure if you saw it, but the task's already there. Set it up for you to run daily. You can adjust that if you want it to. I have it running at 3 AM so it doesn't clash with other things that might be going on. So if I go back to Chrome and duplicate this tab, let's try this on HTTPS. And there's some deliberate faults in HTML. So it works, but it's kind of a bit bollocksed. So if we go back to this would be what other browsers would call a mixed content warning, where some of the stuff is coming over HTTP.
No user understands.
So if you go back to the HTML, there's a few errors in here. So the image tag is HTTP, and the style sheet tag is HTTP. So yeah, if this is the first time you've done HTTPS for your site, you do need to go through and check a reasonable amount of pages, check that you've done things right.
It's incredibly fun if you have a WordPress site. Yeah.
You can put HTTPS. You can put HTTPS, or you can put // which tells the browser use the same protocol that the browser's using. So that's up to you, really. You might find if you're using a lot of third-party libraries like Google Fonts or jQuery that are hosted on CDNs, that you need to update those sorts of links. And yes, image tags in old blogs, maybe, you might want to update them. Of course, if it's relative to the local site, you can just start with / and it will just take it relative to the domain name. So yeah, you have to do this pane for any site that goes to HTTPS. But if we correct those two faults that are in there currently, and refresh this,
Biggest fight is always script
bingo.
references.
Yes. It's scripts that call other scripts sometimes, and then there's an image referenced in a style sheet on someone else's server, and yeah. So now we've got a green secure. If we click on that, it will tell us the.
That's good.
Yeah.
So this is telling us now we've got. So this is telling us now we've got a certificate. It's got 90 days on it, and it's from Let's Encrypt. That's fine. Now, if this is the first time you've done this, then there's a few other things you can do as well. So if you go back to IIS and you have a look at the stuff that you get there, you'll remember I said to install the URL rewrite module. So we're going to use that to redirect HTTP traffic to HTTPS. So just pop in there and we'll click add rule, blank rule, give it a name, HTTP to HTTPS. And we're going to go for any URL that matches the pattern star. So that will be any URL. And we're going to add an exception for traffic that's already on HTTPS, because otherwise you create an infinite loop, and browsers like Chrome stop it after 7 redirects. Other browsers don't. They just sit there redirecting. So you can just put the word off in there, or I think there's a more correct version. I don't understand the syntax for this, but it's saying if it's HTTPS, I need to put a bar. If a condition HTTPS matches the pattern, then turn it off. And then there's an action. So what do we want to do if the result is true? So we don't want to rewrite, we want to redirect. And again, we'll pinch this. Which basically says stick the host name in and the request URI, so the domain and the script name, and we've got a tick box to say append the query string, so nothing should break. We should capture most scenarios for that. And you can get more advanced. You might want to maintain access to a particular URL on HTTP. I don't know, maybe some legacy systems talking to it and it can't be changed, that sort of thing. And we're going to go for a 301 redirect, which is a permanent redirect. And we're just going to click apply on that. And if we go back to the HTTP version now and refresh it, it will get changed to HTTPS for you. That's an easy rule. There's other ways of doing it, but that URL rewrite module is really easy, and you can use it for doing other sorts of blocking or putting up maintenance pages, that sort of thing, very easily. So that's it for the demo. I'm just going to go back to the slides for a moment. So yeah, it's easy to do. Kind of the actual process takes about 10 seconds. It's the install, the sorting your site out, which is going to be the time-consuming bit if it's the first time that you've gone secure. And you can do other things beyond that. So there's a site called SSLLabs.com, which will check your site and give you a score, trust rating. And if I ran that now, it would probably come up with a C or a D, because by default, Windows and other operating systems have unsafe protocols enabled. So it will still have SSL2, 3, TLS 1, which are now deprecated. They'll still be enabled. If you turn those off and remove the weak ciphers, which are the key kind of specifications, then you'll get a better score. The caveat of that is if somebody comes on an old browser, then they might not be able to come to your site. So if someone's on Internet Explorer 5 or something, then you question whether you still want that person to come to your site, I guess. And it depends.
Cache machines running Windows XP?
Yes. I guess it comes down to a business decision if you've got a use case for people still having these things or not. Retest your website and improve the rating. So what are ciphers? This sort of crap. There's a tool in Windows where you can get access to these and specify which ones you want, and it's all kind of text-based and a bit messy. But there's another tool called IAS Crypto, which will kind of do it for you. And you can click profiles of kind of preset levels. So if you want PCI compliance, because you're an e-commerce website and you're taking credit card payments, then you can just click PCI 3.2, which came in at the end of June, and it will set the relevant things for you. So to recap, why use Let's Encrypt? Pros, it's free. The main cost will be your time. It's a bit messy the first time when you go to an open source project and then you read about tool implementations and there's options to choose from, like you don't know which one to use. That's going to be your main time cost really. But there are various options other than on Windows for different setups. Main pro is the automated renewal process. It's ideal if you have your own server, you've got direct access to everything. But lots of hosting providers support it as well now, automated in lots of cases, and a lot of people have said that it's on the roadmap for hosting packages. If you use Azure Web Apps, there's a process to go through to use it on that. It's not as simple as if you've got server access, but it is free, and I think there's something in the gallery which will kind of help you do that. Cons, well, it's basic SSL only. I've put here no wildcard. Wildcard was on the roadmap. Terence has just told me during the break that that kind of went live a few months ago, but it's requiring a bit of a change to the mechanism. So a lot of the tools haven't implemented it yet, but if that does come on at some point, then that's fantastic. Cons, there's still some pain in setting it up, that's true.
It's not as much as going for one of the paid options.
No, if you've got shared hosting environment, then you likely either haven't got an SSL option or you've only got one option of their choice and you pay their price. You maybe should question whether paying someone £30 a year to host your website is a good business decision, I guess. Go for something a bit more professional or a virtual machine and you'll get a lot more control. All right, well, thanks very much.
Thanks, Mike.